He had some comments about black people and how we need to deal with racism. I just rolled it.
So I don't think you can change that part of human nature. What you can do is you can make kids resilient against it. And the way you do that is by giving them a great education so that they know that they have potential. And the other thing is to give them business models, role models, and opportunities within their own neighborhood. You know, black men who are running barbershops, who are running bars, who are running dance studios, who are running local businesses, restaurants, etc., and who are part of that community. And you know, when I was a kid, my uncle was the first Irish Catholic president of our country, and when he ran for president, there was a tremendous resurgence in anti-Catholic sentiment in this country, and a resurgence of the Ku Klux Klan. I remember crosses being burned when I was a kid against an anti-Catholic president. A lot of other, I was called a Mick, a mackerel snatcher, all these anti-Catholic slurs when I was a kid. But it never bothered me. If somebody called me that, I would think that guy's got a problem. But I didn't think I have a problem. And that because I had a great education, I had a family who loved me, I had role models in my country, I had confidence in my own future. Oh, you know, those kind of things had no impact on me. And that's the kind of resilience that we want to give the black American children, so that they have so much confidence in their own future that when they do encounter the inevitable racism, that it will bounce off them, that they'll be, you know, like the Avengers, they'll be immune to it. And then we don't have to stop racism altogether, because we're never going to be able to do that, but we can have children that are not affected by it, that don't internalize it, that don't see it as their problem. They see it as the person whose race is problem.
I'm gonna have to take a walk. I'm gonna have to.
Yeah, this is like an exhale moment.
A lot of deep breaths.
Yeah, we supposed to let.
Play that. Play that one more time.
So I don't think you can change that part of human nature. What you can do is you can make kids resilient against it. And the way you do that is by giving them a great education so that they know that they have potential. And the other thing is to give them business models, role models, and opportunities within their own neighborhood. You know, black men who are running barbershops, who are running bars, who are running dance studios, who are running local businesses, restaurants, etc., and who are part of that community. And you know, when I was a kid, my uncle was the first Irish Catholic president of our country, and when he ran for president, there was a tremendous resurgence in anti-Catholic sentiment in this country, and a resurgence of the Ku Klux Klan. I remember crosses being burned when I was a kid against an anti-Catholic president. A lot of other, I was called a Mick, a mackerel snatcher, all these anti-Catholic slurs when I was a kid. But it never bothered me. If somebody called me that, I would think that guy's got a problem. But I didn't think I have a problem. And that because I had a great education, I had a family who loved me, I had role models in my country, I had confidence in my own future. Oh, you know, those kind of things had no impact on me. And that's the kind of resilience that we want to give the black American children, so that they have so much confidence in their own future that when they do encounter the inevitable racism, that it will bounce off them, that they'll be, you know, like the Avengers, they'll be immune to it. And then we don't have to stop racism altogether, because we're never going to be able to do that, but we can have children that are not affected by it, that don't internalize it, that don't see it as their problem. They see it as the person whose race is problem.
So he talked about his uncle becoming the first Catholic president. Go to my iPad. Robert Kennedy's grandfather was Ambassador Joseph P. Kennedy Sr. Read this. By 1935, Joseph P. Kennedy had his wealth increased to 100. This is by 1935. His wealth had increased to $180 million, equivalent to $4 billion in 2023. He also acquired enough capital to establish million-dollar trust funds for each of his 9 children that guaranteed lifelong financial independence. That's one story. Here is, this is from history.com. And it talked about how Joseph Kennedy amassed his wealth. First of all, he was a bootlegger with the mafia, had his money in other things. Dog, you just walked right past the camera. I got you. So go ahead. All right, I'm just going through here, y'all. Look at this right here. Kennedy sold his liquor franchise a decade later. He walked away with $8.2 million, more than $100 million in today's dollars. All right, let me just keep going on here. I'm just going on while I'm sitting here looking at how he made his money. So that's how Kennedy made his money. Do y'all know what this is? This right here, y'all, is the Kennedy compound in Hyannisport, Massachusetts. This is the compound. This is where the Kennedy family traveled. This is where they played football. Y'all know there were no crosses being burned at the Kennedy family compound. None of those things were actually happening there. You do know how rich they were. Then when JFK is killed on November 22nd, 1963, his brother Robert F. Kennedy then becomes the leader of the family because the dad had a stroke. See, the thing was passed down. So it was Ambassador Kennedy, eldest son had gotten killed, had died before. Then it was JFK. Then it was RFK. And then after RFK was killed in June 1968, Teddy, the youngest boy, y'all do realize the girls couldn't control the family wealth. Mm-hmm. It went down to Ted. And then for Ted, it was Ted and it was the grandsons. That's how the wealth was controlled. And so here you got this white man who took heroin in college, standing before a group of black people, telling them that, oh, we should just raise them to be like the Avengers. Just shake the racism off. Just that they need to be able to just, be resilient. You can't show me a Kennedy who could have withstood the racism and the bigotry that any regular, ordinary black person had to endure and still survived. Show me the litany of black people who were maids, janitors, who washed and cooked white folks' houses and children, yet were able to send their kids to college to have a life. There is no white man in America who should ever tell anybody black what resilience looks like. You can't show me. You cannot stand before me. And every black person, put the video up and show them. Every black person who was sitting there listening to Robert F. Kennedy, if they didn't cuss his monkey ass out, shame on all they sorry asses. Because there's no way I would be silent and have some white man or white woman tell me that the way we need to be able to raise black kids is to have mentors and role models, and if they could be just, to be resilient, they can just shake off the haters, shake off the racism, and like be Avengers. Really? Robert Kennedy Jr. could walk into a bank and he doesn't need to have a business plan. In fact, Robert Kennedy Jr. doesn't even have to walk into a bank. His family can self-fund it. Robert Kennedy Jr. can run around with his anti-vaccine conspiracies and travel the country with all of his nonsense because he's the beneficiary of a trust fund that was paid for by his bootlegging grandfather. And so we are supposed to sit here and accept that kind of bullshit?
Woo.
We're supposed to sit here and tolerate this ignoramus trying to tell black people, folk who are the descendants of people of African descent, who were kidnapped and taken from Senegal, from Ghana, from Sierra Leone, and other African nations, and transported across the Atlantic and dropped off in Brazil, in Jamaica, in Haiti, in the Dominican Republic, all across the Caribbean before arriving here. The millions that died in the transport, and then those that came here and were savagely beaten and treated and shamed and degraded. Black women who had babies cut out of their womb. Black men who had their penises cut off. Do we need to describe what white folks did in America to the body of Nat Turner, where his entire body was mutilated and held up like a trophy? Do we need to talk about 300 black people dying in Tulsa in 1921? Do we need to talk about the Red Summer of 1919? Do we need to talk about the savage brutality in Wilmington, North Carolina? Should we talk about the constant bombings and beatings and lynchings that took place? Should we talk about the group of black soldiers who killed white folks in Houston for how they were being treated? We can go on and on and on and on and talk about Rosewood. We can go all across this country. And this son of a bitch has the audacity, the unmitigated gall to sit in front of a group of black people and explain to them how in the hell we should equip our boys and girls to be resilient. Real simple, Robert Kennedy, fuck you.
Woo.
How dare you stand there and say that to black people? Because there's no more resilient group of people in this country than people of African descent. No group in the history of the United States has been degraded, maligned, beaten, killed, torn asunder, abused mentally, abused physically, abused spiritually. Our men, our women, education, economics, health, yet we are still here. Mm-hmm. Yet we are still standing. And you somehow want to stand there in all your whiteness, in all of your privilege, in all of your riches, to tell black people how we need to put an armor on our kids in order for them to be resilient. See, the problem, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., is not black folk being called nigger. The problem is not black boys and girls being called coons. The problem, Robert F. Kennedy, is not black boys and girls being called porch monkeys, lawn jockeys. The problem is when they smile in our face and say loan denied. The problem is even in 2024, when you black, you have to take down the black paintings and the books and the family portraits from your walls and your shelves, and remove your DVDs and remove anything that has a semblance of blackness so you can get the right appraisal for your home. Mm-hmm. See, what Robert F. Kennedy Jr. don't understand. See, when you are white in America, you can go into a hospital and get treated, but you can be Serena Williams and a black woman, and they question your pain. And you have to yell, holler, and scream to be treated while you were having a baby, and you could have almost lost that child. See, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., he don't know what it means to be a black CEO. And you walk into a room, and the white folks mistake you as the staffer or as the assistant and not the CEO. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. don't know what it means when you're a black woman who is Angela Alsobrook, who goes to the U.S. Capitol. And the first thing the Capitol Police assume is that she's a staffer. And then when told I'm not a staffer, they said, are you the spouse of a member of Congress? And she says, no, I'm the duly elected United States Senator from Maryland. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has no idea the reality of what black folk have to contend with on a daily basis. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has no idea. Even if you have all of the degrees. See, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. talk about all that resilience and that Avengers. I don't let nobody white mistreat me. I don't let anybody, black or white, talk to me any way they want to. But don't you think for a second, when I'm having to sit here and I'm talking to Group M, and I'm talking to Publicis, and I'm talking to Horizon, and I'm talking to IMG, I'm talking to all of these ad agencies, and then they decide, no, we're not gonna buy black. And they don't say we're not gonna buy black. They just don't buy black. When I'm dealing with political campaigns, when you look at the top 5 firms, ad agencies, and how much money they made, more than $600 million was funneled into those firms. And the top one was $280 million. Do y'all know what the top amount of money that went through a black ad agency in the Harris for President campaign? It was $28 million. Top white firm was $280 million. 10 times more. See, I can go on and on and on. See, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has no idea that you can be black and well educated And you can be armed with the Spirit of God on you. That's Ephesians, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. You can talk about that coat of armor, that spiritual coat. You can have all of that, and you still are going to deal with the indignities of race. Remember when Oprah Winfrey was over there in Paris and tried to go into that jewelry store and they wouldn't hit the buzzer? You want to show me or tell me when John H. Johnson Publishing Company, got stopped by the cops of Chicago for driving his Rolls Royce? How do we know about racial profiling, Robert F. Kennedy Jr.? Oh, poor black people had been stopped by the cops for a long time. But it was middle class and upper middle class black people driving their Jaguars and Mercedes and BMWs on the New Jersey Turnpike who went public and told people about the reality of driving while black. But we're supposed to sit here and take lessons from somebody who needed heroin to study in school. We're supposed to sit here and just be quiet and meek and say, yes, boss. Yeah, boss, please tell us how us good black people, how we need to act and behave in order to go forward. Please, boss, can you tell us how we need to equip our youngins for them to be able to survive in America? Oh, by all means, boss, can you please just give us a little of your wisdom? Because we really don't know. We black folk, we don't know what it means to be resilient. And I'm so glad that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. came by these parts to educate us black folk on how we need to equip our kids to be resilient. So y'all, let's all just together, just give Robert F. Kennedy Jr. a round of applause for being such a gracious white man to show us the white print on how to raise resilient black youngins. Future generations will look on this day and say, praise the Lord, that God done sent Robert F. Kennedy Jr. our way to avoid vaccine shots, sent him our way to tell our black kids, if you want to go to the highest of your graduating class, take some heroin and things will be well in school. We're going to look on this day 50 to 100 years later, and we're going to say in the year 2124, how is it that black people just started soaring in America? And we're going to be able to say it was because of that wonderful white man, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who came by to give us a little talk and to show us peons, black folk, how to get ahead in America. Thank you, boss Robert F. Kennedy Jr. I sure appreciate it. Do you want to put your feet now on my stomach in order for you to heal your sickness and to fix the brain worm in your head? Let me just go call my nieces and my nephews and bring them along, boss, so they can lay on the floor and make you feel at home. Get the fuck out of here.
Hi, I'm Isaac Hayes III, founder and CEO of Fanbase. Fanbase is a free to download, free to use, next generation social media platform that allows anyone to have followers and subscribers on the same page. Fanbase was built through investment dollars from equity crowdfunding from the Jobs Act. People just like you help build Fanbase, and we're looking for more people to help build Fanbase. We are currently raising $17 million in a Regulation A crowdfund on StartEngine. We've already crossed $2.1 million, but we're looking to raise more capital from people just like you that deserve the opportunity to invest in early stage startups without having to be accredited investors. So right now, I'd like you to go to startengine.com/fanbase and invest. The minimum to invest is $399. That gets you 60 shares of stock in Fanbase right now, today. And then use Fanbase to connect with friends, grow your audience, and be you without limits.
Joining us right now is Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett of Texas. Glad to have you on the show. Things got a little funky. Talking about bring the funk on Capitol Hill. Congresswoman Summer Lee, Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley, you got these Republicans who are acting a fool, talking about, how oppressed they are as white men, and the things have just been so rough, Congresswoman. They're having a difficult time in this world because the oppression that they're facing. And then you got these commentators out there saying, see, right there. Congresswoman Crockett, she's the problem. That's the problem with these Democrats. They keep using this woke language, and this is why they're going to keep losing.
Yeah, so interestingly enough, I was watching commentary from the New Zealand Parliament, and there was a line that really caught me as they're having kind of this struggle as it relates to Indigenous people. And the line was, when you are accustomed to privilege, to then have to deal with equality makes you feel as if you are oppressed. And that line hit me so deep because that's exactly what it is. These are people that have enjoyed privilege their entire lives, whether they want to recognize it or not. And for literally everyone, because I kept saying, where's Byron? Where is Byron? Is Byron about to jump in this? Because I want to see what Byron has to say, because Byron served on the committee as well. But for some reason, Byron wasn't around to debate this particular bill being marked up. And the author of it, Representative Cloud out of Texas, was complaining that right now they are being oppressed. And then there was an issue with Higgins out of Louisiana, where he was arguing that he had been oppressed because Ayanna Pressley asked him to stop misusing the legacy of Martin Luther King and basically honor the wishes of Martin Luther King's family. And he said, see, y'all are trying to oppress me. You're trying to take away my First Amendment right. And it was just frustrating because they consistently use this language and they really don't understand what oppression is, or they want to pretend like they don't understand. And that's why I needed to make sure I reminded them of what Google has defined oppression as. And I'm sure any other reasonable dictionary defines oppression in a similar way. And they are not being oppressed. They are whining little men.
You mentioned New Zealand, of course, Parliament was temporarily shut down. This is what after Maori lawmakers performed a haka, a traditional dance demonstrating the community's anger over you're talking about the treatment of Indigenous people in that particular bill. Pull the audio up, y'all, real quick. Come on. Come on, I wish y'all break out in the haka on the floor of the House.
I don't necessarily see that happening, but there is this movement of the far right that we're experiencing right now where it's all about whitewashing. It's all about deleting. In fact, again, in that same scenario in New Zealand, they talked about the colonization. And one of the things that I wanted to make clear is that oppression looks like what my ancestors have endured, and they have nothing to reflect upon as it relates to their ancestors being oppressed in any way. If anything, they were the ones that were inflicting the oppression, at least their ancestors were. And that was why I wanted to remind them of that. But that's also why it's so dangerous that they want to delete Black history from our history books. Because if you don't know your history, then you're doomed to repeat it. And when you see the likes of, say, a Byron Donalds out there who wants to glorify things such as Jim Crow, it is important that they recognize that there are those Black folk like me, like Rep. Ayanna Pressley, like Rep. Summer Lee, that will not allow them to delete us and delete our pain out of history and then decide to move forward and inflict more pain.
This was a study done from researchers at Tufts University School of Arts and Sciences and Harvard Business School, where we're at a point now where whites believe that they are the victims of racism more often than Blacks. I talked about this in my book, White Fear, how the browning of America is making white folks lose their minds. I said in this book that we are living, I've been giving these speeches since 2009. And I was saying then, so the last 15 years I've been saying, we are living in this age of white minority resistance. We're living in this age where white Americans feel as if they are being discriminated against, they're being targeted, they're losing opportunities. So you got this DEI thing, you got all this sort of stuff like that. And they have created this hysteria that, oh my God, that their world is crumbling down. And then of course, then you got these Democrats we're spending too much time on identity politics. We're leaving these things behind. So you got Bernie Sanders, you got Chris Murphy, all these people. And what kills me is they act as if whiteness is not an identity. They act as if that's not real. And I sit here and so they're like, well, we need to get away from these things. And it's like, okay, and run to what? Because the reality is Donald Trump absolutely pressed the buttons of white identity. You look at the targeting of white men and males. Maleness is identity politics. And these white male Democrats, I'm like, I don't know what world they're living in where they can't see this, because for them, anything other than white is identity politics. But anything with them, oh, no, that's just politics.
Exactly. No, that's exactly right. And it is important that we continue to make the record clear on who it is that's bringing this up. They continue to try to say it's the Democrats. We're not bringing this stuff up. Like, this was not a Democratic bill. This was a Republican bill that was being marked up. And I have every right to make sure that I challenge any bill that comes into my committee or any bill that comes on the floor. This wasn't us and something we initiated, but it is something that I felt very strongly about responding to and finishing, because it's just a bunch of games. And for those that are cowering and deciding that they are okay with towing the Republican line to where they are going to whitewash us, I have news for you. If you are a Democrat, it has been people of color that have held you down in your seat. That is for sure. Every single Democratic seat that you look at, 9 times out of 10, there is a person of color demographic that is holding that district down and making sure that it's Democratic. So, when you're out there and you're saying that you're going to represent your constituency, it's not just the people that look like you. It's your entire constituency. And I try to do that every day that I'm in the House. But the reality is that just seeking equity should not be a problem in the land of the free and the land of opportunity. Acknowledging that there were wrongs that were done to people like me, to the extent that, yes, I am sitting in Congress. And so, yes, I have made it further than I could say the average Black woman, specifically when it comes to politics, knowing that I'm only the 55th Black woman to ever swear into Congress. But that doesn't mean that there aren't obstacles that exist because of the kind of built-in systemic issues that we have. And you can't start to fix systems if you decide that you're going to ignore that there's a problem. If there's no problem, there's nothing to be fixed. So the fact that they are trying to roll back the hands of time, and they said that this was all because they wanted to make sure that the most qualified people are working in our federal government. And I applaud my coworkers, especially Melanie Stansbury, who made a very good point of pointing out that Donald Trump is definitely not concerned about qualifications. When we look at the people that are being put into position, and I even made the point yesterday, and I said, I can't say that I agree with Senator Scott on anything. I can't say that I agree with Byron Donalds on anything, but I can tell you this. Those two Black men are more qualified to serve in some capacity in the Trump administration than the random people that Trump has decided to empower. But one thing is different about them, and is that they're Black. And that is what diversity, equity, and inclusion seeks to get rid of, is this idea that if it's white, then it's always right. But to absolutely say, we will at least give a look to somebody who is different. And what they failed to really talk about in that hearing is that diversity is defined the way in that particular bill in such a way that veterans are diverse, in such a way that it's including your sexual orientation, it's including your sex, it's including all these things, but it's not just race. It goes down to your religious background. It's talking about diversity as a whole. And they didn't want to talk about that. So there actually potentially will be a negative impact specifically on our veterans, because a lot of our agencies look at your service as a veteran, and they look at that, and that helps you out when it comes time to earn a position in the federal government. And now they don't even want to do that. And these are people that risk their lives to make sure that we can maintain freedom in this country.
Does it frustrate you when these DEI debates and discussions are being held and white women are silent? Because the fact that the numbers don't lie.
They benefit the most.
White women are the greatest beneficiary of affirmative action, of DEI, of diversity than anybody in America. No, white women.
Yeah.
When you look at contracts, they say MWBE. If you are a Black woman, you go in the Black category. If you are Latina, you go in the Latino category. That W should be WW, white women. They are silent. And these Republican white women, these Democratic white women, these independent white women, and they sitting here the ones making all the money from DEI, the corporate jobs, the CEOs, they ain't saying nothing. And that's why I keep saying that, they got to be called out. You got to be saying, hey, Representative so-and-so, you going to get in this? Hey, Representative so-and-so, you know white women who have city, county, state, federal contracts. That's DEI. Why y'all silent?
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. I didn't have enough time, but that was one of the points that I was going to make, is that white women are the greatest beneficiaries of DEI. And so when you're talking about DEI hires, they always try to use it as a slur against Black folk, to be perfectly honest. But the reality is that DEI is a lot deeper than that. That's why I went into all the categories that are classified as diverse. But white women, again, we're not engaged in this debate. This debate, everything that I can remember, and I haven't played it back, it was nothing but the white men on the Republican side that were arguing for this. Now, they all voted for it, for sure, but they did not get engaged in the debate whatsoever on their side of the aisle. Everyone of all backgrounds was engaged in this fight as it relates to the Democrats. I really wish we would focus on the things that could actually bring us together in this country, and the things that would actually solve some of the issues that we really need. Unfortunately, I don't know if the American people just weren't aware or just didn't care, to the extent that we now ended up with a Trump trifecta, where we will end up with more of this in attempt to delete and misuse and water down the legacy of Martin Luther King, and use his words as reasoning and rationale for absolutely eviscerating his legacy. That's what we're dealing with right now, is a bunch of folk that were supported by white supremacists that have a white supremacist agenda, whether we're talking about the actions that they will bring forth in Project 2025 that we constantly try to warn people about, that people said, well, he said he ain't got nothing to do with that. As of now, I think at least 2 of his nominees were authors of Project 2025. So, I don't know why people ignored us or didn't want to believe us or what the case was, but it's time to buckle up.
So I'd love to get your perspective on this here, because this has sort of been getting on my damn nerves. Ever since the election, you've got your fellow Democrats, everybody's weighing in on why Vice President Kamala Harris lost and so things like that. So this is journalist Matt Iglesias. He goes, because he was asked, somebody said, just once, I would love people who say these things to be specific about what exactly would mean to, quote, abandon identity politics. He goes, one salient example of identity politics that hurt Democrats recently was the decision in 2020 to make Kamala Harris the VP nominee, despite her poor electoral track record and unimpressive performance on the campaign trail because Biden needed to pick a black woman. Now, I'm gonna show you this second tweet. This is Chris Murphy of Connecticut. He goes, of the 20 highest median income states, Democrats won 18 of them. Of the 20 lowest medium income states, Democrats won 3. Yes, race and gender play a big role in politics, but the hard truth is Democrats clearly aren't listening to the people we say we fight for. So I want to go back to the first one. That is what Matt Iglesias had to say. Here's what I find to be very interesting, Congresswoman, since Matt desires a salient example of identity politics. In 2008, there was a guy who ran for president. His name was Senator Barack Obama. In 2008, there was a guy who ran for president. His name was Senator Joe Biden. This is the same Senator Joe Biden who ran twice previously for president and failed miserably. He had, quote, go back to the tweet, he had a poor electoral track record. He was unimpressed. He did an unimpressive performance on the campaign trail. But in 2008, Obama secured the nomination. And do you know what all the talk was in D.C.? Obama's going to need to pick a white man who can talk to those Rust Belt white people. And so he needs to pick somebody who has serious foreign policy experience. So who does he pick? He picked old Joe, a white man. What's interesting is that Matt Iglesias asks if Joe Biden was not unimpressive in running for president. Mm-hmm. Sure, he was reelected as a senator, Vice President Kamala Harris, but she was elected as a senator from California. But people actually said Obama needed to pick a white man. He picked a white man. But Matt, it's amazing how Matt and other Democrats act as if his white male identity politics, that didn't exist, that it was identity politics. And then Chris Murphy talks about these states, these low states, they're red states. Democrats, please show. Democrats passed the Affordable Care Act. Who has that helped more? Broke people in red states. Who has benefited more? White men in red states because of health care. When you look at the economic policies, that's helped those people in the red states. So I'm trying to understand, maybe you can help me, whether it's Murphy or Bernie Sanders and others, explain to me how we have to do better to working class people. Show me where the policies aren't helping them. They're not voting because of the policies. They're voting because of culture.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, when you ask people, tell me exactly which economic policy Trump proposed that most impresses you, they can't answer that question. And like I know that I traveled the entire country And so this wasn't about this. And I kept telling people, I remember the last church that I visited in Atlanta, Georgia, and I said, this is going to be a vibes election, because if you want policy, she's got it. If you want policy from him, he's got concepts of policies, or he's got Project 2025, but he doesn't have the policies. And the interesting point that you just made is that in those states where they are thriving economically, they are democratically run. So, like, yes, Louisiana is constantly having a problem. Mississippi, Alabama, and Republicans run everything. And they are the ones that are broke. They are the ones that are lacking in healthcare. And honestly, these blue states that people complain about are the ones that are carrying them on their back. So, listen, for everybody that wants to talk about states' rights, I thought that it was an interesting move that the governor in California decided to make, where he said, I'm going to call a special session. We going to keep our coins here, because guess what? California got a lot of money. California contributes to take care of these other states that ain't got no people, and consistently put people in based upon, oh, you know what? Well, we are the party of religion. No, y'all not. Have you seen the top of your ticket? Have you seen his nominees? I mean, he's got at least 3 people that he nominated that have sexual assault allegations in some way around them, including his own sexual misconduct situation. So no, don't preach to me about religion. And as I try to tell people all the time, if you religion, go to church, but don't try to find it in your politician, because that's not our job. And this is coming from somebody that is the child of a preacher. I will tell you that if I had to assess anything, it is our communication. People don't know what we're doing, number one. So, it's kind of like the fact that people felt as if Trump cared about them when it came down to the stimulus checks. They thought that that was Trump. That was a failure of communication on our part. The fact that people don't truly understand who has the power of the person, how these things work, that is a problem that we have on education. So we've got to do better, and we can't just come out at election time and try to educate people. We've got to consistently educate them. We've got to consistently call them out immediately when things happen. And we also have to say, when it is a culture war, let me redirect you, because they decided that they were going to distract you, and make sure that you're pointing that out. But listen, here's the deal. I consistently heard on the trail, well, he's a businessman and he's strong. Those are the 2 things people would say. They would tell us Democrats are weak, and they felt like he was strong and that he was going to fix whatever pain they were feeling economically because he's rich. He's a businessman. Well, this is a brand that he's been building way before he ever ran for the presidency. And so it is hard to overcome that, because he had a solid brand that people bought into, and they also believe that he's authentic. All the gaffes and nonsense that he was making, they were like, oh, at least we know what we're getting with him. He's real. They felt as if they did not know the vice president, because even though she had been elected and had a great track record, she only had 107 days to brand herself outside of being Joe's vice president. And so people don't understand how difficult it is to kind of overcome some of that. I did hope that with everything that he was doing, that people would say, and with him being very clear about where he was with Roe and that kind of stuff, that people would say, you know what, I got to get out and I got to vote against him. But a lot of people decided to stay at home. And it's unfortunate, because we all are about to feel the effects of that.
Absolutely. You ran for the Democratic Policy and Communications Committee, lost to Congresswoman Debbie Dingell. That to me is a part of this. Communication is critically important. You're absolutely right. I said for 3 years on this, for all 4 years, that the administration was doing a horrible communicating policy. They were passing things, not talking about it. Not only that, amazing work happening when it comes to criminal justice reform in the Department of Justice. I said to Karine Jean-Pierre directly, to the chief of staff of Biden, I said, how do y'all never even bring this stuff up from the White House podium? And so it was just crazy. And I really do hope that the House Democratic Caucus listens to you. And again, I get this is nothing. I got great respect for Congresswoman Debbie Dingell. But here's the reality. I've never been contacted by her office. Never. My whole deal is, if you're trying to communicate, stop only talking to MSNBC. You got to be everywhere. You got to be on cable news. You got to be on digital shows. You got to be on podcasts. You have to be in a constant messaging mode. And I said to the campaign, I said January to July should be education, information, education stage, enlightenment stage, informative stage, because folk don't know what you did. And you can't wait to the last minute and think a 30-second commercial actually going to do it. Real quick, questions from panel. I need short questions from each panelist. Kelly, you go first.
Sure. So we can talk about policy all day, right? And I've seen you on panels. I saw you at CBC. I saw you at Urban League and the like. And I absolutely adore you. Like, I watch all your clips and all those things. So this is my favorite
question, Kelly.
For a second.
I got to get to that question, Kelly.
I know. Real quick. As far as even with Roland's shirt, it said, I already did my job, get somebody else to do it. That kind of vein of thinking. As a Black woman in this political space, how are you encouraging yourself to keep going? And what do you recommend for Black women such as myself who, frankly, we're tired? I feel like we did our job. What else you got for us? Get somebody else to do it. How do you encourage that line of thinking as well?
Yeah, so, Roland started this off by talking about the fact that I did run for DPCC chair. And this was really to stretch my caucus because the times are different. A lot of my colleagues said, they had committed to Debbie 2 months ago. 2 months ago, as I explained in my speech, because I took all the time to really talk about what I was doing, I was actually traversing the country and trying to do everything that I could to make sure I could save democracy. I had raised over $4 million for this caucus. The raised goal as freshman leadership representative was $500,000, so I raised 8 times as much money as required. I made sure I gave out close to $400,000 or more to frontliners or red to bluers, either directly for myself or I raised for them, and I gave the caucus approximately $200,000 myself. So I was not sleeping. I was working. I was not seeking a position. And I think that we do get into this rut sometimes, specifically within kind of the party structure, where it's like, well, let's just kind of keep doing what we've been doing versus kind of challenging ourselves to kind of think a little differently. I also did not know, going more so to your point, how much I really was willing to do. I needed to take some time after the election and reflect. And the vice president called me about 2 or 3 days after the election. And she did what she always does. As difficult as it was for me to get out of bed, she was the one that reminded me of why I do this work. I don't do this work for me. I do it for the people that I serve. And so while I think that it is important that Black women take our rest, we rejuvenate, and we decide how we want to move forward, I think that at the end of the day, we have been so loyal because we know that the stakes are just too high. We know that we want better for our families, and this is what it looks like. It looks like us doing the heavy lifting. But I definitely believe that we've got to take our rest. But when I look for inspiration, I think about the college girls that were texting me, DMing me, saying how much they look up to me, the itty bitty girls that for whatever reason know my name and show up in the Capitol And I think it's never been about me. It's been about the future generations and really wanting more for them. But it's important that we get our rest and we decide how we want to move going forward. And I think it is going to be important that we harness our power collectively and make demands and say, if you want us to work for you, these are the things that we're going to need in return, because we will have to have some assurances before we go out and break our backs again.
Matt?
Yeah, so Congresswoman, you're incredible. It's amazing to see the work you've done. My question for you is, what is the most pressing legislative issue for you at the start of the new Congress? What are you hitting the ground running on legislatively?
If I'm being real with you, I don't anticipate we're going to have too many legislative wins coming out of a Trump trifecta. I mean, we know that this has been the most unproductive Congress in the history of the Congress, and they only had one lever of control. It looks like the majority that the Republicans will have in the upcoming Congress is going to be even slimmer. So we're really going to be on defense. The things that we really need to get done are things such as the Farm Bill, because we're now 2 years behind. But I don't anticipate anything good for us. So at least I know SNAP benefits are safe so long as a Farm Bill has not gone through. But we definitely need to make sure that we're supporting our farmers so that they can hold on to their farms, so that we are not importing all of our food. That is a really big issue for me, considering that we have so many in this country that are already food insecure. Other than that, we're going to have, a few of our yearly must pass things. I am concerned about whether or not the government will shut down, because we know the last time that the government shut down, it was when Trump had the presidency. That will be devastating for us if he does shut us down. So for the most part, it's just a matter of playing defense. Obviously, if we were looking at Democrats being in control, repro would be at the top of the list. Voting rights would be at the top of the list. Criminal justice reform would be at the top of the list. I am hoping that in the lame duck, there's a letter that we're about to send to the president requesting that anyone who is currently incarcerated under the 18-to-1 disparity as it relates to crack cocaine, hoping that the president will commute those sentences so that those that are still sitting there under those disparities, that they can be recalculated to the 1-to-1. That is something that this AG, as it relates to his prosecutions, it was always 1-for-1. So we're hoping that we can do that and get some folk out of prison that have been sitting way too long, and reduce the sentences of others. We know the numbers. We worked with the Sentencing Commission to get the numbers. We know how many how many people would actually come home. So we are about to push it out, and we hope to get the support of the president. I did have an opportunity to sit down with the Attorney General sometime before the election to talk about this being something that I really wanted to push for in the lame duck. So that's really kind of like my one big Hail Mary that I'm trying to make sure we can throw. But that's obviously before January. Come January, it's just going to be defense.
Michael.
Representative Jasmine Crockett, could you please explain briefly what the Dismantle DEI bill of 2024 is? Because according to USA Today, if it became law, it would effectively close all federal DEI offices and eliminate federal DEI programs. We know that's part of Project 2025. Also, how are these white men on the committee defining the term woke? I hear them use the term woke, but they never define it. Thank you.
Yeah.
And great job in the committee educating them.
Thank you. They definitely don't have a definition of woke. As far as I'm concerned, if it's the opposite of what they want, then they consider it woke. As it relates to the bill, you're absolutely right. So when we start to talk about programs within various schools, whether it's, I was looking at a portion of the bill that talked about kind of how they're encouraging in the healthcare space there to be more diversity. And we obviously already are in a great shortage as it relates to healthcare because of COVID-19. It would remove all funding that would help those that are historically disadvantaged from being able to get funds that would help them to potentially excuse me, be able to pursue their education. Excuse me. There was an amendment that specifically was put in by Rep. Presley that was specifically put in to make sure that HBCUs would not be defunded under this. Oddly enough, it did pass unanimously. So that was thrown in there because theoretically that could happen. Also, there's a provision that prevents someone who's been in any of these offices from transferring to another office. So if you ever worked in a diversity, equity, and inclusion office, then you would be prevented from transferring to another governmental kind of agency. Usually, if something gets shut down, then you have protections that allow you to go and transfer somewhere else. But basically, any funding that in any way is attempting to increase diversity in the federal government, it would be gone, as well as any positions, as well as the data showing us, this is how many, I want to say it was the FBI, how they now have to report the encounters, right, or at least keep track of the encounters and things like that. It will get rid of all of that.
Okay, thank you.
All right, then. Well, Congresswoman Crockett, listen, Thanksgiving is coming up. Get some rest. Enjoy the fam. And then, of course, got Christmas happening December. There's work that still can be done. And you're right, come January 20th, we are going to be in a state of war, battling folks who want to dismantle everything. And what I keep telling people, look, focus on that, build locally, and then also focus on 2026, because you can stop that nonsense in 2026 by voting the right way. So get rest, but also we got to stay focused and get to work.
Absolutely. Good to see you.
Appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Hi, I'm Isaac Hayes III, founder and CEO of Fanbase. Fanbase is a free-to-download, free-to-use, next-generation social media platform that allows anyone to have followers and subscribers on the same page. Fanbase was built through investment dollars from equity crowdfunding from the Jobs Act. People just like you help build Fanbase, and we're looking for more people to help build Fanbase. We are currently raising $17 million in a Regulation A crowdfund on StartEngine. We've already crossed $2.1 million, but we're looking to raise more capital from people just like you that deserve the opportunity to invest in early-stage startups without having to be accredited investors. So right now, I'd like you to go to startengine.com/fanbase and invest. The minimum to invest is $399. That gets you 60 shares of stock in Fanbase right now, today. And then use Fanbase to connect with friends, grow your audience, and be you without limits.
Remember I told y'all that this fool here think he's God, Donald Trump? Well, he really thinks he's God. So have y'all seen these new Bibles? Check this out. These fools are selling Bibles, and he has his name above God. I told y'all they sick. They are sick and demented. But these white evangelicals, they think he's the second coming of Jesus, and he is their God. He is their God. This is exactly what they think. This is how, look at this, the Holy Bible, his name is above it. Nutcase. You got to be out of your damn mind to buy a Bible with Donald Trump's name above God. But that's what you're dealing with these crazies here, Julian.
Exactly what you're dealing with. There is a biblical verse, I'm not a biblical scholar, and put no man above me. Put no man above me. It's a biblical verse. But this man, his narcissism is such that he put himself above God. It's absurd, but it's also absurd that someone who has broken every commandment that's in there, every commandment, violated every proverb, that he has the temerity to sell Bibles. But the bigger set of fools are the people who pay $69.99, $70, y'all. Pay $70 for a Trump Bible. You can get your basic Bible, real nice with gold, gilded leaves, and everything else, about $30 at the religious store. Roland, I don't think. Yeah, I'm not often speechless, not often, but this temerity really renders me speechless.
Well, it's very simple. It's very simple, Jay. When you're a grifter, you're a grifter.
There you go.
That's correct. When you are a grifter, you are indeed a grifter. And there's so much garbage when I saw this, so much stuff to discuss when I saw this. I'm gonna try to just limit it down quickly because as a believer, I was very disturbed. And especially he has two, editions coming out. One is the 47th president, the inauguration. The other one is the day God intervened, which is the mark of the failed assassination. I'm like, what is this, your testimony edition? Trump, are you doing testimony services now in writing? Like, what is going on? And both, like you said, both of the editions are going to feature Trump's name above the Holy Bible and God, which is so blasphemous to me. I think this is another branding opportunity, an example of the tyrant-induced narcissism that Trump has. And lastly, I want to know how all these white evangelicals and some of even the black pastors in these inner city church who were inviting Trump in to speak, and these rich Kenneth Copeland, Joyce Myers, those millionaire, billionaire, even pastors, are you all going to purchase this book for your congregation? That's what I really want to know. Are you going to purchase it for yourself and purchase it for your congregation, the same people who you were encouraging to vote for this man?
Again, he is their God, and he is a modern day Saul. The people said they wanted a king. God's like, all right, I'm going to give y'all a king. Here you go, with his evil ass. Congo?
The president of the United States is going to swear on a Bible with a U.S. flag on it with his name above God.
And then he's going to sell it.
And then he's going to sell it. That was made in China. That's our next president of the United States. I mean, the fact of the matter is he has been their avatar. And the fact that the flag is on it as well is just a reminder that these guys never believed in the separation of church and state. It's some of the things we talk about as it relates to like the Islamic extremist caliphates in other places and parts of the world. That's what they want to create here in the name of Christianity. So they don't care if Trump is doing anything that he's doing right now with his name above God or anything like that, because he is just a vessel for them and their Project 2025 inclinations and policies to implement everything that they want to. I mean, Pete Hegseth, who's the DOD, whatever, he's looking at the DOD. I think he said it should be the flaming sword of Christ or something to that effect. I mean, they're looking at the government in every way, shape, or form to implement their Christian extremist agenda. And Trump is just an avatar for that. So the fact that Julian talked about he's violated every sin is because they don't care. As long as he's going to help them do whatever they want, he can have his name above God on a Bible. He can have it made in China. He can have a flag on it because they are hypocrites, and he is the biggest hypocrite. And so this is what we've been saying all along in this entire show. We got to buckle up and watch out, because all of these guys, they talk trash about each other, but they are united and making sure that they can do everything possible to make this country an extreme Christian nation. And we got to be ready to fight it.
They are absolutely insane, but he is their God. All right, y'all.
Hi, I'm Isaac Hayes III, founder and CEO of Fanbase. Fanbase is a free to download, free to use, next generation social media platform that allows anyone to have followers and subscribers on the same page. Fanbase was built through investment dollars from equity crowdfunding from the Jobs Act. People just like you help build Fanbase, and we're looking for more people to help build Fanbase. We are currently raising $17 million in a Regulation A crowdfund on StartEngine. We've already crossed $2.1 million, but we're looking to raise more capital from people just like you that deserve the opportunity to invest in early stage startups without having to be accredited investors. So right now, I'd like you to go to startengine.com/fanbase and invest. The minimum to invest is $399. That gets you 60 shares of stock in Fanbase right now, today. And then use Fanbase to connect with friends, grow your audience, and be you without limits.
What's up, y'all? Look, Fanbase is more than a platform. It's a movement to empower creators, offering a unique opportunity for everyday people to invest in Black-owned tech, infrastructure, and help shape the future of social media. Investing in technology is essential for creating long-term wealth and influence in the digital age. The Black community must not only consume tech, we must own it.
Discover how equity crowdfunding can serve as a powerful tool for funding Black businesses, allowing entrepreneurs to raise capital directly through their community through the Jobs Act.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in Black culture, covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in Black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20036-0196. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com. Oh, hashtag, we tried to tell you. Donald Trump kept lying that, nothing get Project 2025. He knew nothing about it, didn't want to read it, had no impact on his campaign, yet it's amazing how he keeps hiring people who are all tied to Project 2025. We're seeing this in his cabinet picks. We're seeing this in their policies. And the reality is they are going to implement that 900-plus page leadership guide. We were clear. Journalist and author Ahmed Baba, who wrote what Trump's cabinet and staff picks tell us about his second-term priorities, joins us now from Brooklyn. Glad to have you here on the show, Ahmed. Look, it's real clear. They were lying the entire time. And these idiots in the media fell for it. Well, Trump said that wasn't the case. And we're like, Trump lies about lies. So we all knew he was lying. And so he names Brendan Carr to be chair of the Federal Communications Commission. Who is Brendan Carr? He only wrote the section of Project 2025 dealing with the FCC. Okay, we can go down the line. All of these people who he's picking all have tied. His press secretary. Oh no, nothing to Project 2025. She's in their videos, and so it was all a lie, and we knew it. And guess what? A bunch of folks in this country fell for the okie doke, and they effed around, and they're about to find out.
Yeah, they're about to get a really extremist agenda. I mean, we've been calling this out for months. I've been on this for over a year now. And essentially, as we could see the whole time, Project 2025 directly aligned with Donald Trump's agenda. We saw this in the beginning. CBS did an analysis that found 270 proposals directly match Agenda 47. We saw many of his former appointees and administration officials crafted it. Brendan Carr, now literal direct author of the FCC chapter, and he actually got in a Twitter beef with me after I called out his ties. He responded by saying, "I'm so sorry this happened to you." So as we can see, internet trolls.
I'm sorry, you're breaking it right there. He said what to you?
He slid in my replies at 2 a.m. and said, "I'm sorry that happened to you," in response to me calling out his Project 25 ties. It didn't really make any sense. So essentially, we have essentially affirmative action for grifters in Trump's cabinet here. We have internet trolls who are sitting here in my replies and other people's replies, the incoming FCC chair, who has promised and indicated that he would target the broadcast licenses of networks that Trump disagrees with. He spoke about NBC. Today, he was on Fox News talking about CBS. So we have not just Brendan Carr, but we have Matt Gaetz, who would implement retribution. Project 2025 calls for, this is something for your Black audience, for us Black folks to care about, turning the Civil Rights Division on its head to target and essentially take universities or people who are trying to boost diversity, accuse them of discrimination, right? So there's all of these avenues that these cabinets indicate Project 2025 plan will be implemented successfully. And not only that, as we personnel policy, that's how the saying goes. Donald Trump has successfully won, unfortunately, and I think Americans are about to be really shocked by the extremist agenda that he implements. I think a lot of people, you know, if they really did vote for inflation, they're not going to get price cuts here. They're going to get a really extremist agenda, mass deportations, Project 2025 agenda that we all said was his. Obviously, it's not directly his, but Agenda 47 echoed the bulk of it. And we're about to get this full force rolling.
Well, first and foremost, I laugh at these fools in the case. And Brendan Carr knows better when he's talking about, oh, we're going to go after CBS, let's say go after NBC because they had Vice President Kamala Harris on Saturday Night Live. First of all, go to my iPad. These are the CBS owned and operated stations. For all of y'all out there who don't understand how the FCC works, the FCC only has jurisdiction over stations with broadcast licenses. Let me be clear. CBS has affiliates. These are the only owned and operated stations of CBS. That's it, y'all. The rest of the stations that are CBS affiliates, those are locally owned or they have independent owners. So the only licenses they can go after are these stations. And you gotta have a little bit more than, oh, Vice President Kamala Harris went on Saturday Night Live. So here's the other thing, and I meant to tweet this to Brendan, and I'm gonna tweet it to him. I'm very interested. So Brendan Carr is saying that SNL did not give equal time to Donald Trump because they brought on Vice President Kamala Harris. Okay, is Brendan Carr, and this is where progressives need to be a lot more, to me, guerrilla-minded. Salem Broadcasting, those are radio stations with licenses. How many times did Donald Trump appear on the radio shows of Hugh Hewitt and others? And why didn't those stations give Vice President Kamala Harris equal time? See, Brendan, if y'all want to play this game, we can play this game. We can go after Sinclair Television and their content as well, because those are FCC licenses. Now, if they want to play that game,
on that.
Sure. Now, again, because he's basing the SNL thing on equal time, okay, we can do the equal time conversation. Let's go.
Yeah, and the thing about Sinclair Broadcasting, they see Brendan Carr as a facilitator to this. You're calling out the hypocrisy perfectly. And unfortunately, at this point, they don't care, right? They don't really, there's no ideological consistency. It's just getting their way. So one of the things he's going to potentially do is roll back more regulations that was preventing Sinclair from having more of a monopoly on local stations. So we could see more disinformation proliferated at the local level. And you know, when it comes to CBS and these other networks, although, like, for example, MSNBC doesn't have a license, but their parent company does run some local broadcasting stations, right? So what we could see is it used more as a threat to kind of push people to toe the line. We've seen a little bit of that in recent days, people trying to curry favor with Trump, trying to change their messaging. So we're seeing the threat be enough to change the tone and tenor of some coverage. So that's what we're seeing on the FCC side. And these other cabinet picks, it's just so absurd. I mean, we had Steve Bannon, we have Matt Walsh, we have people who were openly saying right after he won that Project 2025 along, and it vindicated people like me and you, Roland, who have been out here warning about this for a really long time. And although some of this will get tied up in the courts, and you know, there's various things that he might not be able to do on day one, like, for example, Biden is rolled back or actually implemented a rule to make it harder for Trump to essentially target civil servants. But again, he has executive power. He can roll that back. So we're just going to have to see. The guardrails are going to be tested here once again. I mean, the courts are filled with conservative justices, so it really depends on what court where these various things are going to be presented to, and ultimately whether Chief Justice Roberts is really going to let this tilt into full-blown authoritarianism. But, you know, we're not there yet. It's just going to be one of these things that happens a day at a time, and we just have to stay vigilant and call out these plans and people like Brendan Carr and Matt Gaetz who are appointed.
Well, and look, then the reality is, look, folks, okay, they voted for it, and they're going to get it. And so the 70 million people out there who they're about to whack when it comes to food stamps, when it comes to subsidies, the people out there who are going to get whacked, who are going to get deported, all of these different people. And so, and like I saw one story of a guy was like, oh, yeah, I know I might get deported, but I still love Trump. Okay, love his ass back at home. These folks, see, I love all these people. It reminded me of, again, 2016, when people were like, oh, I voted for Trump, but I hope I don't lose my Affordable Care Act. Well, dumbass, that's who you voted for. So, and I'm telling you right now, okay, if Trump and the Republicans try to come in here and get rid of the Affordable Care Act, it's going to be a bunch of crying white people, a bunch of crying broke white people in Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, Florida, Tennessee, South Carolina, North Carolina, Arkansas, especially white men whose lives were changed because of the Affordable Care Act. But y'all want to play games? Go right ahead.
Yeah, I mean, what we're going to see here is overreach, right? Trump thinks he has a mandate on his extremist agenda, but as we see, you know, Roland, me and you, we know all these plans, but the average American, a lot of them are tuned out. They don't know the exact details of what Donald Trump is about to pursue. They think, you know, tough guy, economy, lower prices. That's maybe what they thought when they went in the voting booth. But tariffs and a lot of these policies are going to hit, like you said, some of these vulnerable people in red states that Trump considers his base. And by then it's too late. We've elected the guy. And I think one of the silver linings, which is unfortunate because a lot of people are going to get really hurt by this, especially migrants. And I think as Trump overreaches, I mean, we look today, Mike Johnson and their new trend, they're thinking about putting a rule in to prevent the new transgender member of Congress from using, a woman's bathroom. They're focused on these extremist issues that is going to backfire, right? Like Trump can't cancel the midterms as much as we've called him an authoritarian, but he's still in the wannabe stage, right? It takes time. It takes chipping away. With this extremist agenda being implemented, I suspect it's going to backfire heavily. Like I really think when people start to struggle because he went all in on his agenda when he thought that he was just, he really is misinterpreting this as a broad mandate of all of MAGA extremism. And I think this could cost them the midterms. And then hopefully we have that legislative check. And then going into 2028, we can have some kind of figure in here because he can't run again. I mean, he might try, but constitutionally, I'm not on the whole Trump third term vibe. I really think that this is going to be a hard 4 years. And if everybody locks in, we all are staying committed to spreading people, I think we can really pull back from the brink. Maybe I'm just being optimistic. I don't know where you stand on it.
All right, then. Well, we shall certainly see. And again, I keep telling y'all, for all these people who voted for him, all I'm going to play for the next 4 years is Scarface's No Tears. I don't want to hear whining or crying because this is what you chose to do. We appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for having me, Roland.
Folks, on my panel, Dr. Mustafa Santiago Ali, former senior advisor for environmental justice at the EPA. Joining us from D.C., Dr. Larry Walker, assistant professor at University of Central Florida. Out of Orlando, Benjamin Dixon, pastor, political commentator out of Atlanta. Glad to have all three of you here. I'm being very serious, Larry. All I'm going to do is play No Tears. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear any whining, complaining, crying. Someone was saying that the number of searches on Google, can I change my vote? I'm sorry. You had 8 years. You saw what happened in matter of fact, you go back further. Okay, you go to 2015, 9 years. You go to 2011. They knew exactly who this man was. They decided, they willingly accepted evil. Now they're going to have to accept it. Now they got to accept that Dr. Oz being over Medicare, Medicaid. Okay, even though he paid a massive ICE fine. Okay? Okay, Matt Gaetz sleeping with 17-year-olds. The women testifying that they actually saw that happen. Please, don't look. I'm telling you, I'm going to get a shirt that says, don't blame me, I voted for the black woman.
That's real talk, Roland. And so the next 4 years are going to be like if a farmer decided he was going to let a fox inside the hen house and then close the door and say he's not responsible. What happens to the hens? So that's essentially what our next 4 years are going to look like. And so, Roland, you're right. Black folks in particular have consistently, not just the last 4 years, so the last 8+ years, warned about what Donald Trump his first administration, now the second administration will look like. So you talked about the Affordable Care Act. We saw the attacks against the Department of Education and all the other damage that could be done to Homeland Security, state, in terms of international issues. We could go on and on. And listen, Roland, I worked on the Hill, and essentially what the Republicans have done is in the second Donald Trump term, is every single thing they had ever hoped to do when it comes to dismantling the federal government as a state is exactly what's going to happen. Going after federal workers in terms of how, the post office, all these other things that people take for granted. And, in terms of Americans don't know what it's like to live without, are going to find out what it's like to live out with these essential services. And so you talked about the Affordable Care Act, Roland, and how, some folks don't understand that the Affordable Care Act is Obamacare. And so why they say they don't like Obamacare, they have the Affordable Care Act. And so why this, it seems silly that people don't understand those differences. They fell for the banana in the tailpipe. And you're right. There are millions of people who are going to lose their health insurance. Parents who have were able to keep kids on their insurance until 26. Let's not talk about pre-existing conditions in terms of individuals we all love about who have had previous health challenges. Their ability to get new insurance or keep their insurance will be made virtually impossible. And then once again, this is the dismantling of the federal government as a state, and we will all pay for it.
I really, Mustafa, it was really difficult, yes, but for a lot of these people, I really don't want to hear a lot. I don't. It's not like, again, it's not like they didn't know. It's not like they didn't know the kind of things that he said. They didn't know about his behavior. All of these things were there. They were covered. It was public. It was all there. They simply said, oh no, eggs are too high, even though eggs went down. Gas is too high, even though gas went down. Oh, the economy is awful. Okay. They said, we're going to ignore how he responded to COVID because we're going to only focus on those 2 other great years. Okay, good luck.
Yeah. I was thinking about this earlier, and it's amazing. I don't think most folks get that they're literally going to be paying for incompetence and extremism. So they're going to use your tax dollars to actually implement many of these things that are going to put your life in a much more difficult position. For some folks, it will shorten your life. For others, it will take your life. And, there's a responsibility normally for individuals who take these types of positions. One, you're supposed to be one of the best if you're going to lead, whether it is HUD or EPA or HHS or a number of different places. The other part is that you are supposed to care about the community and you're supposed to take civil servants seriously in this space. But now you're going to have folks who, whether you believe in wanting to have clean air or clean water, that is going to become much more difficult. When we look at, as Brother Larry just talked about, around healthcare, for those of us who have been fighting for criminal justice reform, we now know that that's going to be much more difficult. For voting rights, all these different types of things, you are literally paying for these things to be dismantled and deconstructed. So I hope you get what you had hoped for, because, now you're paying for it in so many different ways, in both your health and the future of your children, and in relationship to your positioning inside of this society.
Ben.
One of my concerns, Roland, is the power of MAGA, the misinformation machine, to turn the minds of these people. I've seen people in person who literally embrace the destruction They embraced the destruction of COVID. One guy came and said that he felt it was his patriotic duty to get sick with COVID, right? And the ability to manipulate the minds of the masses at that level really suggests to me that even after they go through the stage of destruction, they'll still be turning back to Donald Trump, thanking him for punishing them and thanking them for destroying their lives. And so it's a really sickening deception that is over this entire country that honestly, we have to be delivered from, because it's going to impact us as much as I want to poke in the eyes of other people. And I'm doing my best. I want that T-shirt that you're going to get. Don't blame me. I voted for the black woman, right? I want that T-shirt, but I do know that when they start rolling back water regulations, that it's going to impact our water supply. When they affect the EPA, it's going to affect everyone's air that we breathe. So it's really going to have a deleterious effect on every single one of us. But there's going to be a subset of folks who turn around and thank their dear leader, Donald Trump, for making their life miserable.
Oh, absolutely. And again, had a whole campaign, and the folks chose to do differently. So any of those people who go, oh my God, I regret my vote, we tried to tell you.
Hi, I'm Isaac Hayes III, founder and CEO of Fanbase. Fanbase is a free to download, free to use, next generation social media platform that allows anyone to have followers and subscribers on the same page. Fanbase was built through investment dollars from equity crowdfunding from the Jobs Act. People just like you helped build Fanbase. And we're looking for more people to help build Fanbase. We are currently raising $17 million in a Regulation A crowdfund on StartEngine. We've already crossed $2.1 million, but we're looking to raise more capital from people just like you that deserve the opportunity to invest in early stage startups without having to be accredited investors. So right now, I'd like you to go to startengine.com/fanbase and invest. The minimum to invest is $399. That gets you 60 shares of stock in Fanbase right now, today. And then use Fanbase to connect with friends, grow your audience, and be you without limits.
All right, y'all. Special Counsel Jack Smith is dismissing his federal election interference case against the Orange Man due to a long-standing Justice Department policy that bars the prosecution of a sitting president. Now, y'all know I already think that's still stupid and BS. Now, nearly 16 months after a grand jury first indicted Donald Trump over his alleged efforts to unlawfully overturn the results of the 2020 election, Smith asked U.S. District Judge Tanya Chutkan to throw out the case ahead of Trump's impending inauguration. In Smith's motion, he wrote, as a result of the election held on November 5th, 2024, the defendant, Donald J. Trump, will be inaugurated as president on January 20th, 2025. It has long been the position of the Department of Justice that the United States Constitution forbids the federal indictment and subsequent criminal prosecution of a sitting president. But the department and the country have never faced the circumstance here where a federal indictment against a private citizen has been returned by a grand jury and the criminal prosecution is already underway when the defendant is elected president. Confronted with this unprecedented situation, the special counsel's office consulted with the department's Office of Legal Counsel, whose interpretation of constitutional questions, such as those raised here, is binding on department prosecutors. After careful consideration, the department has determined that OLC's prior opinions concerning the Constitution's prohibition on federal indictment and prosecution of a sitting president apply to this situation, and that as a result, this prosecution must be dismissed before the defendant is inaugurated. Earlier this month, Judge Chutkan canceled the remaining deadlines in the case after Smith requested time to assess this unprecedented circumstance and determine the appropriate course going forward, consistent with Department of Justice policy following the election. Trump pled not guilty to federal charges of undertaking a criminal scheme to overturn the results of the 2020 election by listing a state of so-called fake electors. Now, he also asked for this to be dismissed with prejudice, so it could be brought back later. Let me know when we have Jade back, folks, because I want to. She's a lawyer. I want to talk to her about this here. But I'm gonna go to Omokongo first. Omokongo. So okay, Jade's there. Okay, so here's the issue that I have. Constantly with this whole deal, Jake. First, they are operating off of a DOJ opinion, which is based upon a memo written when President Nixon was in office and his DOJ was trying to save his ass. The problem that I have is this opinion has never been affirmed by the courts. So what I don't understand is why Merrick Garland didn't have the guts to say, no, go forward and take this thing to the federal court. Let the courts decide that a person who was indicted prior to being inaugurated can't be prosecuted. Okay, now, the court has ruled a president has immunity based upon actions of the office. He was a private citizen. That to me is why I have a problem with what Jack Smith has decided, because Merrick Garland, the Attorney General, has chosen to be gutless in this situation.
You're absolutely right. I think they are being very selective in changing and adding rules as they go along. As you say, that was a recommendation, suggestion by the DOJ. And also one thing that I'm noticing with that is that it brings into question the statutes of limitation, right? Because there's not going to be any tolling on the statutes of limitation. So what I think they are strategically trying to do is that if you put this law, if you put this requirement in place that was never made a law, right, then by the time Trump is in his presidency, the statute of limitation will probably have ran, right? So there is no way he can be accountable for his decision. And on top of that, who would the special counsel now give the liberty to make that decision, right? Would it be the DOJ? Who would the DOJ give that liberty to? Also, the only case at that point which would be hanging over Trump's head when he enters the office will be the civil fraud case with a judgment of nearly $500 million. So that one's selectively going to be brought up, right, and hanging over his head. However, the other felonies and the other more severe charges and cases will not be.
I already have an issue, Julian, with New York and Georgia suspending their cases because those are state cases. They do not have to abide by a DOJ opinion. But let's just be real honest here, Julian. The reason we're here is because Merrick Garland is gutless. Merrick Garland should have called for a special prosecutor on January 21st. No, he waited 2.5 years. This is on him. And this is why he will go down as one of America's worst attorney generals.
Gutless is a nice thing to say about him. That man really, he got a consolation prize. He was going to be a Supreme Court justice, nominated by President Obama. He didn't get it. I blame President Obama for bringing that gutless. Okay, I'm editing myself, y'all. You know how when I put my head down, I'm like, I'm not going to say that today on TV. But that gutless mofo into the orbit of basically administration leadership, because he is no leader. He is no leader. If he didn't do it on January 21st, Roland, it should have been February 1st. But they didn't. He slow rolled everything. And one wonders if he is actually a Trumpy in disguise, because the slow roll is what benefited the incoming president the most. Bonnie Willis deserves high props in Atlanta. Tish James in New York deserves high props. And there is no reason for them to dismiss their cases. These are state cases. What he did in Atlanta, calling up, dialing for votes. I just need 11,000 and so many votes. That's illegal. The whole thing with paying strippers illegally, that's illegal. I mean, so if Jack Smith wants to dismiss based on a 1974 Richard Nixon protecting law, that's Jack Smith. And he's probably scared. He is probably scared. And that's okay, dude. You can be scared. But the other part of it is this other part. The state cases should not have to go away. And I think Jade is right. You know, the whole issue of the statute of limitations works in Trump's favor, but it doesn't have to. It really doesn't have to. There are all kind of workarounds with this, and there's so many brilliant Black and other lawyers out there. You know, the day he steps out of office, he can wear some handcuffs or bracelets, as they call them.
Here's what I think is just dumb here on Makongo. This is just what I think is just flat out, just nonsensical with this whole deal. Okay. So the DOJ opinion says you can't prosecute. Why not test it in court? If the courts say you can't prosecute, well, then you just go ahead and just can't prosecute. I mean, that's all it is. And I don't think that Merrick Garland was a Trump plant. I think the problem is when you pick a judge, a former federal judge, to be a prosecutor, he is thinking and acting like a judge and not a prosecutor.
That part.
Which is why many of us wanted Doug Jones in that spot.
Yes.
And look, the fact of the matter is that too many times in this Justice Department, when it came to Trump, they decided to do nothing because they didn't want to appear to be political, not understanding or not caring about the fact that not doing anything is political. Right? Inaction is an action. And so they waited, 14 months after, Cassidy Hutchinson finally came to the January 6th Commission and finally decided to launch this investigation. The Justice Department, we've talked about Kristen Clark and so many things that they've done in that department, which have been positive for our community. But at the very top of the issue, the way that they let this particular situation lollygag and let this man who is just a criminal on so many different levels. I mean, look what's going on with the inauguration right now. They haven't signed a memo of understanding. So now they can continue to raise money and anybody, foreign or otherwise, can give money towards his inauguration, like to just raking it all in. So they're in action. They could have dealt with this. And like you said, Roland, let's just get it to trial. Let's get this stuff to a judge. And if things become, guilty, not guilty, you can't do that and so on and so forth, then let it be so. But the fact that they didn't want to push the limits for an insurrectionist who's about to let all of those guys who they actually spent efforts going out to arrest and prosecute, that he's about to let them out and pardon them. The fact that they let this guy skate because of their inaction, because they didn't want to seem political, is a disgrace. And this is something that people are not going to forget anytime soon. And I'm not going to sit there and say they should be ashamed of themselves, but this is embarrassing for the country that this criminal gets to be at the top of our highest order right now because in large part, because the Justice Department didn't do its job. There should have been an investigation started on January 7th because this is what it came down to, and they let it slide. And here we are right now with Trump 2.0.
Yep, absolutely. And so, this is going to be on Merrick Garland, pure and simple. Trump is running around saying, I won. No, you actually ran the clock out. That's what actually happened here. And the bottom line is, as Jack Smith said, them pulling this doesn't negate the fact that he did it. He absolutely did it. And so he was guilty. He was flat out guilty. This should be prosecuted. And again, I wish Alvin Bragg in New York and I wish Fonnie Willis in Fulton County in Georgia would be moving forward because they do not have to abide by this memo. This memo only pertains to DOJ lawyers. It does not pertain to local prosecutors. But again, folk just sitting here gutless and scared and don't want to see them fight. And again, I would rather have the courts affirm this damn memo than we just keep going by a memo that was written in 1972 to protect a crook in Richard Nixon. That's what it was.
Hi, I'm Isaac Hayes III, founder and CEO of Fanbase. Fanbase is a free to download, free to use, next generation social media platform that allows anyone to have followers and subscribers on the same page. Fanbase was built through investment dollars from equity crowdfunding from the Jobs Act. People just like you help build Fanbase, and we're looking for more people to help build Fanbase. We are currently raising $17 million in a Regulation A crowdfund on StartEngine. We've already crossed $2.1 million, but we're looking to raise more capital from people just like you that deserve the opportunity to invest in early stage startups without having to be accredited investors. So right now, I'd like you to go to startengine.com/fanbase and invest. The minimum to invest is $399. That gets you 60 shares of stock in Fanbase right now, today. And then use Fanbase to connect with friends, grow your audience, and be you without limits.
We really need to understand, and I think people need to understand that what we are seeing, this is real. You've got billionaires, not just Elon Musk, but you're that billionaire who gave Leonard Leo $1.3 billion to spend however he wishes. And he is funding, they are literally funding this infrastructure changes. This goes beyond the Federalist Society. And so we can't be willy-nilly about what is happening all around us. There is a clear and present danger of the right wing who wants to attack anything and everything that Black folks have benefited from. It's right there in our faces.
Mm-hmm. You know, Roland, it's amazing how you have been sounding the alarm since Taraji mentioned Project 2025 back in June. And now we're starting to see their game plan with all the Trump picks. I mean, these are unqualified individuals. And so it's not going to just impact Black people, it's going to impact America. I mean, you know, just listening to you and Janai Nelson, I started writing down some notes on just the Supreme Court. Let's just take the Supreme Court, for example. Citizens United, the Chevron case, Roe v. Wade, affirmative action, Voting Rights Act are just a few that the Supreme Court started to unravel before the implementation of Project 2025. Then I started writing down some other things, Roland, as you were talking, and you mentioned in your book 15 years ago, Brown versus Board of Education, Loving versus Virginia, Miranda rights. I mean, if you think about this, if we don't have Miranda rights, Roland, that's going to impact every Black person that is profiled, that they want to give police officer sovereign immunity. And so when you start to look at where we're about to head into starting January, the gravity of this is not just the unbalance of checks and balance in our government system. This is going to be billionaires running wild, Trump running wild. And let me make this last point, Roland, is this. All these individuals that voted for Trump, these picks, Roland, they're not for them. It's not going to solve their problems. It's not going to solve their kitchen topic, table topic issues. These things are solely for Trump. It has nothing to do with the 74 million people that said, yes, he's our guy. We voted for him. They're about to see the unraveling of this, the protections that America have for them.
You know, Lauren, I listen to a lot of these brothers and sisters, Black folks who are MAGA Trump supporters. They talk about, what they want to get financially and how things are going to happen. And I'm sitting here going, do y'all understand? They are not trying to help you financially. They are not trying to help you launch businesses. They're not looking to expand SBA loans to Black entrepreneurs. And all of these people, they don't even realize that the programs that have been created, that they have been able to take advantage of, they want to get rid of them. And I'm like, I don't know what world y'all living in, but that's exactly what Project 2025 and the Republican agenda is all about.
Yeah, and they couldn't even be bothered to even hire like Byron Donalds or Tim Scott into the cabinet on a very insular and individual level. You don't even see them, helping anybody that actually helped Trump's campaign, to this point, much less a group think about African Americans in general. Typically in a Republican administration, there is a group of Black Republicans who does see some benefit. We've yet to see what group of Republicans that's going to be. We haven't seen anybody yet. I happened to see Byron Donalds yesterday on Capitol Hill, and he kind of looked sort of glum. And then he did an interview last night where it seems like he's sort of left out in the cold with regard to a administration appointment. But obviously, this is a culmination of really the Southern strategy that started in the late 60s. It's the culmination of Roger Ailes being an aide to Richard Nixon, and then, of course, going on to start Fox News. It's the culmination of the planning of Leonard Leo and the Federalist Society, and you can see that the Republicans play a long, long, long game, and the Democrats are nowhere near catching up to that, not even figuring out on a basic level maybe a 4 or 5 year strategy. And that's been a huge problem. And I'm not sure what is in store for the DNC or the Democratic Party in general with regard to leadership, but their leadership is not strong enough and not modern enough at this moment to go up against what they're going up against, which is a system of lying and disinformation and deliberate misleading of the public, which works in this media environment with a media that is very not up to the job of keeping up with misinfo and disinfo and lying and everything else. And so what this is, to me, is a moment where they are now going to control, of course, all 3 levels of government. And I think they're going to use that control to the maximum, to the absolute maximum. I mean, this is a group that returns again. And we see certain players who I actually think are worse than the first group that came in during Trump's first term.
Absolutely. And, Joy, again, I just, people need to understand that when you start talking about massive cuts to federal programs, and I love these people who think, oh, yeah, let's do all of that, because what they're thinking is, oh, that's for them. No. That's also going to be for you.
That's right. It's for you. And a lot of those poor white people who voted for Donald Trump, it's for you, too. A lot of them are dependent on Medicaid. A lot of them are dependent on all the same social services programs that they think are for people of color, but it's also for them. The cuts to Medicaid to fund tax breaks, tax cuts that they are not going to get. Cuts to Medicare to fund tax breaks that they are not going to get. That's what they will feel in their pockets. But look, I want to make sure that we're giving a message for those who are out there who, if they're watching your program, they know. The question is, what do we do now? Right now, as the DNC regroups, et cetera, we need to be, as an individual, to person, talking to the people in our families, talking to our so-called white friends, talking to our white family members. We have a very integrated culture. Talking to the people who are in our lives and explaining to them what they're going to see, explaining to them the consequences of a vote for Trump or a non-vote, and really, as he disappoints them, underscoring what level of mistake this was. Donald Trump is a cult leader. Part of that is there too. There is no logic here. And I think we keep trying to understand it with logical terms. But the fact of the matter is he is a cult leader that is feeding white supremacy, a feeling of anger that the world isn't what it was promised. And therefore, they're taken in by him. This is classic. We understand this. We need to be talking to our own people and trying to deprogram them through loving communication and direct communication. And I know that's not always what we do here, but I hope I'm talking to everyone in my life who may be on the fence. When people come talk to me about transgender people and stuff like that and distractions, I correct them lovingly and I walk them through it. Because that's the work that we got to be doing in the next couple of years.
Hi, I'm Isaac Hayes III, founder and CEO of Fanbase. Fanbase is a free to download, free to use, next generation social media platform that allows anyone to have followers and subscribers on the same page. Fanbase was built through investment dollars from equity crowdfunding from the Jobs Act. People just like you help build Fanbase, and we're looking for more people to help build Fanbase. We are currently raising $17 million in a Regulation A crowdfund on StartEngine. We've already crossed $2.1 million, but we're looking to raise more capital from people just like you. that deserve the opportunity to invest in early stage startups without having to be accredited investors. So right now, I'd like you to go to startengine.com/fanbase and invest. The minimum to invest is $399. That gets you 60 shares of stock in Fanbase right now, today. And then use Fanbase to connect with friends, grow your audience, and be you without limits.